Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush Show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 21.
What? We're old enough to drink.
This is GreggHoush sitting here with co-host Kayla Avery.
You said it wrong.
The wonderful Kayla Avery.
Yes, that's me.
And our guest, Chris Caesar.
Who I just found out was our guest.
Second time on the show. And, it's always good to surprise the co-host anyways.
Yeah.
And, of course, perennial co-host, Mac.
Mac Daddy, it's the back and Mac. It's Return of the Mac. He's the macaroon. He's the Kraft macaroni and cheese. He's the Blue Box Blues.
And Anna is joining us tonight.
But she's too busy laughing at that amazing intro for the Mac.
I'm mostly being offended that my husband is like the wonderful Kayla, and he's just like, Anna.
Because
she makes me say it.
I do. If he doesn't say it, I whip him.
I don't have a choice on that one.
Yeah,
so
I threaten his life with bodily harm. That's how you get love, right?
So wow. I really didn't think there were going to be this many laughs for this episode.
Look, if we
they're
don't
all
laugh,
on
we're
this
gonna
side of the
scream.
mic, so yeah, I think it's mostly nervous laughter. This week has been a bit crazier than normal, and I got to tell you, the new normal was already crazy enough.
What do you mean, like Nazis are out and about, and Nazis are just out and about. I don't know, like there's nothing else to say.
Killing people, apparently.
Like real, actual Nazis with flags and torches.
The neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, the white nationalists feel empowered, emboldened enough that it is okay to go outside now and wave their flags.
Their world leader is in the White House.
And these are ones not going out with a mask on like the KKK, but actually going out and just saying, here is my face.
Yeah, and I'm going to put it on the internet, and then I'm going to get really upset when people dox me.
Let's go out and just intimidate people, attack them, whatever. Because it's fine now. We're Nazis, and we run things, apparently.
But we're also going to use the most sensitive and silly backyard tools to do it. Let's get tiki torches because who wants mosquitoes around?
Hey, the tiki torches are funny, but the fact that they showed up more heavily armed than the police, I think is something we need to talk about too.
Yeah, oh my God. I can't wrap my head around that. And the fact that Governor McAuliffe, and the police chief too were like, yeah, we had to backtrack because we didn't know what to do. I don't know if that's not if seeing that image of all of the protesters heavily armed with multiple guns, because I watched the Vice episode today actually, and the main Nazi crybaby, who they followed, he's showing all the guns and the weapons that he had on him. It's if that is not enough information or enough awareness of we need actual some gun control. I don't know what it is, because what is going to happen in a situation where you have Nazis that try to take over a siege, a town, because that's what Charlottesville was. They were under siege with people who were heavily armed. And how is anyone supposed to do their job and protect the actual civilians and residents when they have AK-47s and AR-15s and what do you do?
And real body armor,
yeah, they had
riot
shields.
We're lucky that it didn't get there. We are unlucky that it still got somewhere else, that domestic terrorism happened again. And again in America, the domestic terrorism was a white guy from the right deciding to attack innocent protesters.
Yes, that seems to be the use. Anytime there's something, any type of attack, I think young white man who's angry at something. It's mostly a woman, sometimes an employer, but
yeah,
it's usually, yeah.
So, of course, this week we have Charlottesville, and we all at this point know what happened there. The neo-Nazis came out to play. They were mad about a statue being removed, and more importantly, mad about the fact that this was starting to happen in many cities.
So let's talk about that too, because I've been listening to a lot of different people talking about this, and they are using the statues as their platform to talk about it's they don't really care about the statues because they
there
don't.
was a rally about the statues like a little while before.
Yeah,
Obviously,
and also
this
it's
wasn't
like,
that.
and if they actually cared about the statues, they would like have some awareness of like the history around Robert E. Lee. Like Robert E. Lee is a person who had his house and his multiple houses taken away from him, his citizenship taken away from him, and his right to vote taken away from him, and he understood why. Like the reason we have Arlington National Cemetery is because we took his house.
Yeah, that was his property.
The relatives, the still living relatives of Robert E. Lee, have
and
actually come
Jefferson,
out.
Jefferson.
And said, "Take the statues down."
Robert E. Lee didn't even want statues during the in the actual wake of the Civil
Well,
War.
these statues showed up in the late 1800s into the 1900s.
But they talked about after the
these
Civil
didn't
War
happen right
ended.
after.
Yeah, like so after the Civil War ended, and they talked about maybe putting a monument up at Gettysburg. Robert E. Lee even said at the time was like, "Yeah, probably not. Let's not memorialize."
He was very specific that the Confederacy had lost, and they needed to put that behind them and accept that that had happened. And that, memorializing the Confederates was just going to keep the wounds open.
Yeah, so it's like the fact that it's like these people don't care about the monuments because they don't care about history. They're just using this as a platform because they're seeing this as an opportunity to say, "Oh, we know how we can intimidate and we can take our power back." That's all they're using this as. Like they don't give a shit about the statues. They probably can't even name
see
half.
it as a way of recruiting.
Yeah.
But you're talking about the people at the top. They are convincing the people at the bottom, the base of the alt-right, that this is an issue. So those people care.
Well, that's the recruitment
they're,
part
they're
of it.
getting manipulated by the people at the top using
this
this as a recruitment tool.
Yeah.
So, it's really polarizing because me personally, and Kayla will actually recognize who I'm talking about. I have a friend. And in a lot of the threads about this that, we are friends with many mutual people, so I get to see him chiming in.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there you go. She's there now. He has been saying the things that a typical apologist says, which are they're not all Nazis. There were people there who were good people. And the argument that needs to really sink in and that I wish would make sense to these people like our friend, my still friend who I hope to pull back from the brink, but I don't think him and Kayla get along anymore.
Well, like you got to take him away from the internet.
But the argument that really needs to start working on these people, in my mind, the one that should work, I mean, it would work on me if I was over there, but I think it might be too logical for them, is the simple fact that if on one side you've got people whose stated goal is to stop Nazis, the anti-fascists specifically want to stop Nazis. That's what they exist for. And if you are on the other side of the group who only exists to stop Nazis, that right there is a problem that you need to rethink why you're standing on the other side of the people who want to stop Nazis. Part two is if you're on a side, there are two sides in this, and on the side that you're standing on are you and your friends who do not consider yourself Nazis, but then you are surrounded by Nazis, white supremacists, and white nationalists. You really should reevaluate your current beliefs that have put you on this side, because the Nazis and white supremacists and white nationalists and KKK members and xenophobes, they all think you're the same. That's why they're standing there with you.
Yeah,
they
like
think
if you're
you guys are on the same side.
Like if you're holding the tiki torch, and maybe you're not like chanting all the same chants, but if you're standing next to someone screaming blood and soil, you may want to rethink your life.
Also, they're going to use your presence as something that emboldens them. They're going to say, look at the numbers we have. We have the numbers to do the things we want to do. And we all know the things they want to do are hurt people.
Yeah, I mean, I won't stress this. I mean, I'll stress this at the end of the day. Everyone should watch that Vice episode.
They should. It was
I mean, because as much as Vice can be part of the problem and like just,
often is.
Yeah, and also juvenile in a lot of sense, this was like, it was so heavily in your face that you cannot deny what one of the sides was, and it was Nazis.
Unambiguous, unrepentant Nazis.
Yeah, and even called out Ivanka Trump. Like that should strike a chord with even the deepest Trump supporters, like that don't consider themselves Nazis.
So Heather Heyer lost her life at Charlottesville. The
And two other
the one
troopers.
civilian and 2 state troopers. Their helicopter went down after patrolling the event. What's sad about her losing her life, beyond the fact that this wonderful young person lost her life, is watching what happened the second that I heard that someone had lost their life. I knew that it had to be one of the counter protesters, and that someone from the Nazi side had killed someone. I didn't even have to see the news to know that was
I
the
watched
truth.
it live because I was watching it
Yeah,
unfold.
so did I.
Yeah, like, and all of a sudden, like, they're showing, like, you know, the protesters, and all of a sudden the
Well, the
cars.
stuff on the TV was 20 minutes behind. I watched the card on Twitter before. I mean, the TV took 20 minutes to show
Yeah.
it. And I was like, what are they just like making sure they can show the footage first, or what took them so long?
Oh yeah, I saw like someone was periscoping it, and
Yeah.
you knew right away, like, because I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
like,
that
'cause-
wasn't an accident.
yeah, it was. I mean, I had
Came down the street.
like there was no question that it wasn't an accident, and it was really stupid, and I got really frustrated when like there was like all this talks of like, was it on purpose? And it's like, no, you don't back up.
The apologizers were saying, well, but people were throwing rocks and stuff at his car, so
not
he
even
was trying to get away.
but
No,
even
he came
before
all the way down the street
Yep.
to do that specific thing.
Yeah, when you're
Absolutely.
accelerating down the block towards the crowd of protesters, I think everyone knows what you have in mind.
And not
it's
just
not,
that, but,
oh
like-
no, these protesters might throw rocks at me.
And then when you back up, taking the bumper off of another car, and then backing up with the same speed as what you drove into the protesters with, and then speeding off, like, no, like there was clear video footage of this, not only this car ramming over protesters, but backing up, ripping off a bumper, like, and then you still had, you know, mainstream media of like the MSNBCs and the CNBCs being like, because Fox News wasn't even covering it at this point, being like, well, do you think it was was it on purpose? What about that was an accident to you?
Mind blowing. I mean, they've been stung enough by calling it wrong for the last couple years at these events that I think they are hedging their bets a little on what they call. But that one was kind of
And
easy.
then not my favorite thing, but something that kind of really struck. I don't know. You can't even figure out words to talk about like Charlottesville sometimes. But I was listening to another podcast, and they had like a phone call hotline that people were calling in to talk about what had happened. And a woman who had called from Charlottesville, and she said she's like watching the news and watching them talking about the Antifa. Like, she's like, it's so upsetting because they protected our city. They came in and they were protecting us. Like they weren't there to aggress. They were there to protect. And she just spoke so like passionately, like so thankful too about these people. And like, I kind of like my brain kind of veers on the sides of the Antifa because it's like I get so upset watching these events, and I'm like, you know what? Sometimes maybe all violence is the only response. Maybe sometimes that's all we can do is use our fists because nothing else is working. So I get frustrated. So it's like I could sometimes lean these ways, and more so like lately. But like hearing this woman being like, they protected our city from being under siege. It's like, and then she's like, and the mainstream media isn't even asking us, the residents of Charlottesville, what our thoughts are about the Antifa. They're just talking about them. And I was like, yeah, you're right. They were protecting you.
Yeah, I saw a article, I forget which site it was on, but it was a set of interviews with 6 to 8 people from Charlottesville who were present, and all of them just talking about what they'd seen and experienced. And like one of them didn't have a story about how the fascists were going to be attacking a group of civilians before Antifa showed up and protected them.
Yeah.
And that one still had a story that was kind of to that effect, but it was, well, we saw the fascists coming for us, and then Antifa showed up before they could even get over to us.
Yeah, and then you've got like, and I'm listening to like, you know, mostly CNN because I hate watch it, and they're like, well, you know, like you've got one side that thinks that military use of like or violence is an answer because nothing else is working. I'm like, because yeah, nothing else seems to be working.
So we have an environment that allows this to happen, and the environment that is allowing this to happen is not entirely due to Trump. This has been around for a very long time, but I think
But Trump is handing them the microphone.
His rhetoric, his way of being, and his obvious beliefs that he has made very clear this week are giving them more freedom to act. At least they feel more free to act. They feel like they are more welcome on the world stage at this point, because the president of the United States is someone who won't call them out until his staff yells at him for days to say it. And then with a wink and a nod, they know that he only said that to appease the liberals.
Absolutely.
And within a day, we'll proceed to admit that on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then call the news people that called him out for not doing it very bad people, which he didn't say about the white supremacists.
And we have this environment in no small part thanks to Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, an advisor to our president, who started
Chief
on this
strategist,
on this
chief
illustrious path as a World of Warcraft gold farmer.
We learned that last
working
week.
as a Goldman
And,
Sachs executive.
And turned that money with a friend into Breitbart News. And that friend is dead. One of the few people from this type of movement that I really just look at and say the world's better off and just mean it with a straight face. There was no redemption for Andrew Breitbart. And there was no fixing what was broken with him. And I think he finally got there because, I mean, the official story of the heart attack is bullshit. And if you want the real story of what happened in the last about 12 hours of his life, there is a book on Amazon, I Killed Andrew Breitbart. You should read it.
By Chris?
By Chris Farone.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, not you, Chris.
No,
Not
a
me.
different Chris.
Different Chris.
I was gonna say, are we in the presence of a hero?
Yeah, no.
That would be a really
Well,
weird
we
way to
are
plug
in the
book.
presence of a hero if you dislike, lots of people online who this Chris just toys with nonstop. It's been great. I
See,
It's
still.
my male counterpart.
Oh yeah.
I like to troll the people on the book on the Facebook.
Yeah, he does it on the Twitters.
We
I'm all
should
over
we
the
should
place.
gang up and like we can just take them all down.
She would have had a lot of fun with Bo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she would have. We should have brought you in on that one.
We should have had Bowen tonight.
Actually,
I need to know more about
let's
this
do
book.
an episode where we
Come on,
bring
guys,
him
story
on.
time. Story time. You can't.
I
you
know.
can't just
I need to
start.
know more about you, Chris.
We'll get to all of this.
Why? No one told me he was coming on the show.
So Chris is a local, I will call him freelance journalist.
Some people call it unemployed.
raconteur.
Yeah, whatever.
Bank robber. I mean, whatever. Really. I mean, he says whatever. I'm just gonna, start throwing out adjectives.
Wait,
But
are you from Charlestown?
No,
no. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, you
Okay.
That
got
took
it.
too long.
You
That took
got
too
it.
long.
Yeah, it's way too long.
So, we have Bannon in the White House now, and he is, of course, straight from Breitbart, still helping to run Breitbart.
And he even called Breitbart the voice of the alt-right.
Yeah.
And he has called it the voice of the alt-right. And here he is with the president's ear, telling him what to think, what to believe, and sometimes getting listened to every now and
And
then.
he's not even the only one. You've got Seb Gorka, we've got Stephen Miller, who's butt buddies with Dick Spencer, and then you also got Alex Jones.
It's a crazy time at the White House,
it's a
and he
shit
needs
soup
to
can.
go. In regards to he needs to go, there will be more coming out next week. I will be having a guest on from.
Are you telling me now?
Yes, I'm letting Kayla know. From Refuse Fascism. And we're going to be talking about their national movement they're getting going to remove Trump. And we'll see how far that goes. But, so let's not focus too much on that part tonight, because I still, even if you get a national movement, you get the news covering it, you get journalists, you even get some in the government to cover. I still don't see it
Sometimes you
happening
get
for a while.
freelance journalists on Twitter.
Sometimes you do.
That was a nod to you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
So, Chris, what happens next? What happens next is all of the internet starts to fight back, and they start losing domains and hosting.
Oh
and
yeah, can we back up and
payment
like
providers
can we back up and explain what had happened within the 24 hours after the Charlottesville and Heather Herod,
well, of course,
Daily Stormer and stuff like
yeah.
that.
So the Daily Stormer, of course, puts out a call And I believe the quote from their call was calling her that fat skank.
No, they said she was murdered for being a 32 fat slut.
Yeah. The later call.
Childless, you have to.
Yeah,
Oh,
childless fat
yes.
slut. But later, the next morning, they called her the fat skank in the call where they were asking sleuths to get the address, time, and date of her funeral so they could go mess up the funeral. Through all of these actions, the Daily Stormer, a real home page for the alt-right, for the neo-Nazis, ended up losing its hosting with GoDaddy.
Because an activist woman screenshotted it and sent it to GoDaddy on the Twitter. Amy, I'm going to butcher her last name, but I can see her name, her handle in my head. And she was like, hey, GoDaddy, like, this is, you're hosting this site. And it like showed.
Which they had been told like thousands of times by multiple campaigns,
Yeah.
just like PayPal and everyone else had been told that they were using your stuff to do this. And they never did anything about it. It took Charlottesville to get them to move.
Yep.
Yeah. But and then they responded to that woman on Twitter and said, okay, we told them 24 hours and then you kicked off the site. And then I think they
migrated some stuff over to Google's
then,
system, and then Google cut them off. And they were behind Cloudflare, which is just kind of a way to protect your website from attack and make it a little faster and also make it kind of easier to migrate, and just move around a little. And they moved it to dailystormer.ru. And that lasted about 4 or 5 hours, I think, before that was taken from them. And the hosting it was on was taken from them. And at this point, they currently are on gab.ai, which is a very
Great
alt-right leaning social network.
So
With a logo of a green frog in reference to Pepe, the meme that the alt-right stole and has ruined. But
even the creator of Pepe is like
he hates it.
he's like, kill the goddamn frog.
Yeah, so now they're over on gab.ai, and all it really is they're posting on a timeline, kind of like on Twitter or on Facebook. They don't have a site, and what they're doing is, well, for hours anyways, they were just posting their articles as screenshots of articles that people would have to read as an image. And then hours into that, they finally got their dark web site up on a .onion. And
So is the
stormer
stormer up right now?
Well, so during this whole thing, the craziest event happened. Matthew Prince of Cloudflare pulled the support for Daily Stormer's domains and banned them from ever having an account on the site again. And this is something that they have not done. There have been terrorist sites. There have been every type of hate group you can imagine hiding behind hacker groups, you name it, hiding behind Cloudflare. And Cloudflare has been very clear that so much of the internet's traffic touch our servers that we can't be police. We shouldn't be. You don't want anyone to have the power that we could have. Literally, Matthew Prince said once that if I decide a website is no longer on the internet, it is no longer on the internet. There is a human being right now that has that power. And it scared him that he had that power. And he made sure that their policies were clear that we are not policing, period. If the other end wants to police and take down their site, we're only a pass-through. We're a middleman. The hosting isn't with us. The domain isn't with us. Like, those are at other places. Get them pulled there. Don't get them pulled from us, right? And he'd been very strong in his pledge for free speech, privacy, and for not being the police. And you know what? In a large respect, I agree, and no one should have that power. But at a certain point, sometimes you just have to do it anyways.
Because at a certain point, it's not free speech, and this is what gets me.
Well, that's not about free speech; it's about censorship. Those are conflated, but they're not the same thing.
Well, so this is my gripe, right? So, and I've been asking as many attorneys as I can this because it's like I really want to know. Like, so when it comes to Nazis, okay, I won't even go so far as saying white supremacists. I will separate them. So I'll say Nazis and Nazi flags.
They are separate.
And not Nazi memorabilia, right? So it's like, why is that allowed? You know what I mean? Like, if I was to apply for a pro-ISIS rally and I wanted to run around with ISIS flags, no one would bat an eye to say, no, you can't do that. Why shouldn't Nazi flags and Nazi memorabilia be considered the same thing. I personally think they're not different. They are the same thing. Like you can have a white supremacist rally. You can make that argument. I don't agree with it. I will be on the strong side of like, no, I think some speech shouldn't be protected, but I know I'll be alone in that argument a lot of times, but I just don't think.
So what they do is the white nationalists and the white supremacists set up events, and then the Nazis happen to show up.
But like you're still allowed to walk around with a Nazi flag. You know what I mean? Like if I was to put a Nazi ISIS flag on my house, I would have FBI at my door. You know what I mean? Like a Nazi flag should be considered the same thing. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, I know a lot of people would just disagree with me, but I just don't see the difference in the world. I don't think it should be allowed. I don't think you should be able to walk around publicly with a Nazi flag. I don't think you should.
So yesterday, Matthew Prince wakes up and tells us that he thought to himself, I'm going to remove them from the internet. And then he did. And in an interview right after he did it, he said the Daily Stormers are assholes. And then in a memo he sent to all of his employees about policy and enforcement, explaining his action, he basically complained that no one should have the power to do what I just did this morning out of anger. That should not be a power that anyone has, but here we are with it. And knowing that we have that power is something that we need to understand. We need to deal with on a case-by-case basis, but we really need to understand the power we currently hold to censor the world. And I got to say, I'm actually happy that someone like him is the person with that power, because even though he did this one act, which I agree with, he did it knowing how bad of a move it was for censorship, but how good of a move it was just for simple human morality. I'm glad he's the one with that, because I don't know, I might be censoring a few other people too. And I think, at some point that's a little wrong, but that's not even the big thing. So yes, Kayla, a few seconds ago, you asked, is the Daily Stormer up? It is. It's up on Tor on the dark web. You can get to it through a .onion address. And
what is that? That's not like theonion.com.
No. It's just like you go to .com, you go to .onion instead, but you have to be connected to the Tor network to have those actually resolve and show up as a website.
Okay.
And in the strangest series of events, Tor puts out a blog post and a statement saying horrible things about the Daily Stormer racist neo-Nazis. And I say it's strange, not because it's not true and not because they're not horrible. They are. But the amount of stuff on Tor's network that they should be complaining about, if this is a thing they're going to complain about, is humongous. From child pornography sites to drug bazaars to illegal firearm sales, urban legends of assassins for hire that have never been proven. But I mean, the amount of stuff on that network that they have never spoken out about, to have the Daily Stormer be the first thing they talk about, definitely felt weird, felt kind of off. And what's funny is actually watching the Daily Stormer's response to that. If you were following their Gab.ai account, they were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, you're that much of an asshole.
That's how much everyone hates you.
They've never said anything about child pornographers, but us? How are we worse than that? And you know what I gotta say? They're bad and they want genocide, but I would actually first get rid of the child pornographers, then go after the Nazis.
Yes.
That would be the order for me. I think there are people who would definitely weigh that differently, but for me, that's the order. Maybe they could just both go at the same time.
I'd put them right on the same level there.
Yeah. So
I mean, on the one hand, it's certainly true that the child pornographers are directly harming children and on an individual basis doing a huge amount of harm. On the other hand, Nazis do relatively, for the most part, relatively little individual harm, but a great deal of collective harm.
yeah, so either way, both of them suck, and I hope you all die.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think we're
Yeah,
in agreement.
I think this is a really important moment for, people like us, people who have been, internet people for a long time. I think a lot of us have definitely been vocal about how the left sometimes gets right up its own asshole about, being way too into ideology and stuff. And I think we ignored how much up our own assholes we were about free speech and about censorship. I really do think we might have screwed up a little bit, and that might be a part of how we got where we are now.
Well, see, I've never thought that we should have this ultimate free speech platform, and like it really always pissed me off when the ACLU would like defend these platforms, because it's like
we need it.
I don't agree. And
there are very few slippery slope arguments worth having, but that's one of them.
Because this is where I stand. There used to be a difference between free speech and commercial speech. I feel like we need to bring back commercial speech, because for commercial speech should not be given the same protections as free speech. And
I can agree with that.
And like, so with them pulling down Milo's ads on the subway station in DC, that would be commercial speech. You don't have the right to have a commercial.
Yes.
And so I would just flag this in a commercial speech area where it's like, and again, Nazi flags, I believe you should be arrested to have a Nazi flag in public. You can have it inside your house if you want to be that fucking asshole, but if you're going to wave it around in public, you deserve to be arrested, because I think that is
what would be the charge?
Inciting a riot. I mean, like,
just holding a flag is not inciting a riot.
Because it's not just a flag.
It's absolutely a call to violence.
I mean,
it's not just a flag. A Nazi flag is not just a flag.
Right, but inciting a riot is different. A call to violence is a very different thing than just inciting a riot. Those are different. That's why I asked, what is the charge? A call to violence is exactly what it is. And so in that way, definitely walking around with a Nazi flag should,
I mean,
it's
be
also
dealt
harassment
with.
And intimidation.
Yeah, I just
don't think it should be dealt with by the cops at that point. I think if you see someone holding a Nazi flag, go beat the shit out of them.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
absolutely. And you know what's funny? So there was an American over the weekend.
It is a call to violence. A call to violence against the person holding the Nazi flag.
There was an AP news article that came out of the weekend as well, and it was an American tourist was in Germany and was drunk and was like walking around whatever streets, like doing the Nazi salute, and a German, resident beat the shit out of him, rightfully. So it was like, you had Charlottesville coming, then all of a sudden it was like American tourists beat up for giving the Nazi flag. Yeah, that's what should happen anytime you are a Nazi in public. You should get to beat the shit out of.
So I just want to jump in for a sec here on the subject of Nazi punching, which is a subject near and dear to my heart.
It is a skill of mine.
I wouldn't say it's a skill you practice. Anyway.
It's a passionate.
No, somebody actually reached out to me yesterday and was like, I want to put this thing out on my Facebook feed, and, can you read this over for me and let me know, because I know you're really involved in all this stuff. And I read it over, and it's, oh, look, this is another straight white male who is saying both sides should calm down. Come on, honey, don't be that guy. Come on. But he wanted to know what the tactical purpose of punching Nazis is. What is the actual tactical goal for punching Nazis?
Because they shouldn't exist.
Well,
punch them into oblivion.
You can't literally punch somebody into oblivion. Like seriously, like.
I know it's good.
I mean, I think you look at all those videos of people now who are crying and terrified of being doxxed. Like,
that's the goal.
Yeah,
that's exactly the goal. It's
put them back in the basement.
Exactly.
It's to make people afraid to be Nazis in public, but it's also to show people like, hey, there are white people willing to go out in the street and punch Nazis. We recognize that their existence is violent. Their being in public is violent, and we are willing to meet it.
It's defense. It's self-defense. It's punching Nazis.
Absolutely. But I know he's not a Nazi puncher, and I support him not being a Nazi puncher. I don't think we need everybody to be Nazi punchers. I think it would actually be counterproductive. Just having people punching Nazis is not going to solve the problem. So I told him about these two organizations that I want to let everybody know about here. One of them is called Hear Yourself Think. It's just hearyourselfthink.org. And they specialize in training and supporting people who want to help get their relatives out of the Fox News bubble and back sane. You can be conservative and be sane. That's fine. We just want to get people back from Crazyville. There's another one that's called Life After Hate, which specializes in supporting white supremacists and neo-Nazis who want to come back from that brink and rejoin society. And, like, we're not going to get through this with violence. That's not going to be the end goal. Violence may be a piece of the solution, but the hard work is going to be dealing with your idiot cousin, dealing with your racist uncle, talking to your neighbors, and having the really hard conversations and eating your feelings for longer than you want, helping them work through their stuff so they can stop being garbage. And it's not fun, and it's not sexy, and it doesn't deal with the adrenaline you got run through your system because you just watched all this horrible stuff, but it's the work that needs doing.
And there are groups that will help you do it. We will link to these groups on our social media and on the page for this episode, of course. So you will have that. You know, the next interesting thing that happened, besides the Daily Stormer getting chased all over the internet, was that funding finally is starting to get attacked for these people. PayPal, after years of being told about all the various hate groups, including the KKK, who were using their service, has started disabling accounts for hate groups as of, right after Charlottesville. They have started doing it. So have some of the actual payment processors like Apple, Patreon started cutting off the alt-right. GoFundMe started cutting down their campaigns. And as Patreon cut them off, the people claiming to be free speech, but really just these alt-right hate groups, actually started a replacement for Patreon called Hatreon. And Hatreon has been DDoSed off the internet, an attack that took their website down.
Oh, really? I didn't even. Was this a real thing before Charlottesville?
No.
So it started after Charlottesville, and
I think it started before, but it got its big bump into everyone on the alt-right knowing it even existed after Charlottesville.
And now they've already been kicked off the internet.
Well, they were off as of earlier today, but I mean, it was just they were being held offline. None of their hosting or anything was taken from them yet. But I'm pretty positive since it was on DigitalOcean, maybe they could remove it. So that's how you attack these people. You take their money away, right? And so that's where I am. Like, go after them. Great, get PayPal, get Visa, which has now started to come after these types of processors. But MasterCard hasn't come on board yet. MasterCard needs to step on this train.
I mean, they've got Master in the name, so that's probably gonna be hard.
But then
Kayla, come on.
Then
what? I mean, they've got Master in the name, so
you find out it doesn't matter though, because turns out these alt-righters do have money, and when
look at Richard fucking Spencer, man, like a little rich boy.
When this type of an event happens, they are willing to donate to their own causes at high levels. So, as a prime example, a lot of them left hosting providers and other systems that were banning them. I mean, even Twitter and Facebook started banning their groups, their accounts, which is something that was really hard to get them to do for years. They're doing it now. They've all moved over to Gab.ai. And Gab is using a crowdfunding investor platform to allow you to buy shares. And it works kind of like crowdfunding, where it's got start and end dates and everything. But with these dates, they extended it after this event, and before Charlottesville, they had raised about $500,000. During Charlottesville, they got to the point where they were definitely near 500, and it took them a long time to get to that $500,000. And they have raised over $500,000 in the last 4 days for Gab.ai to keep hosting all of these alt-right hate mongers. And it literally took them 4 days for $500,000 in donations to come in for their website for the alt-right. The only way that actually happened on the left was some relatively big donors who ended up giving like $1 million to the Southern Poverty Law Center. But that was from one person. Over on the right, I think it was just over 900 people who gave that $500,000. And so that is not a good sign. I mean, they're going to be able to use that money to build something that censorship doesn't take down. That's enough money to avoid losing your host, to avoid denial of services, holding you offline. It's enough money to keep this hate online.
If only we knew somebody who was really influential in the hacking community. I don't know anybody like that, though.
Oh, I think she's talking about you, Gregg.
Maybe.
Or maybe it's Chris on the Twitter.
I don't know. What I do know is StartEngine.com is the crowd investment / crowdfunding company allowing them to raise. And people should be talking to StartEngine and explaining that maybe you should stop this. Now,
How do we get to StartEngine? Can we go to their door?
People should. I believe their address is on their contact page, and if not, it's in their Who Is. But they are also an investment firm, so you could probably go to the SEC and get it too. But they need to be gone after, just like Apple, GoFundMe, Patreon, PayPal, everyone else, because they are allowing them to raise money. It's really the only way you're going to get them shut up online, because they can keep migrating. I mean, you can drive them to the dark web, but they'll come back.
Yeah, no, you gotta suffocate them in the pockets is what you gotta do. You gotta drain them literally of money and resources, and because that's the only way to do anything and get anyone's attention these days. You gotta hit them in the pockets, or else they're just gonna keep going.
Yeah, so everyone should be reaching out to StartEngine. And we will link to how to do that in the episode notes too. I mean, I don't know what else there is to talk about here. We all know Nazis are bad. We all know Bannon needs to leave. We all know Trump should be removed.
Well, so there was a Barcelona attack today, and within minutes, Trump got on the Twitter and completely denounced it because he's assuming that whoever is in charge of the attack was probably brown.
The first thing I said when the attack happened was I looked over at Mac in our office here and I said, this puts Trump in an interesting situation where I know he's going to come out very quickly and denounce this because he's going to assume this is a brown person.
And he didn't just do that, but he followed it up with everyone should study a myth.
Yes.
Yeah, that was awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Not only was it a myth, but it was a violent myth. And it's a violent murder myth.
A violent, bigoted murder myth.
Yeah. So it's he basically told his followers, his neo-Nazi followers, the David Dukes and the Richard Spencers and all the torch-wielding neo-Nazis and white supremacists that took over Charlottesville, get your guns, dip all of your ammo in pig's blood, and then murder people. That is what he told them.
That is our president.
Yeah, but he needs all the facts before he can speak. He can't say anything without getting all the facts.
Which presumably he means that he needs all of them so he can make sure that nothing he says is factual.
Yeah, he says he needs all the facts to make a statement as he's making a false statement.
So what do we do on the internet to protect free speech, to keep ourselves from over-censoring, to keep ourselves from using these types of moments to give governments power? Australia is really good at using moments like this to try and get their population scared enough to allow them to put more filters and more censorship in place on the internet.
I think there should be a little bit of censorship or regulation. Maybe not censorship, but maybe regulation, because I don't think.
No, I think people should speak. I think it should be free, and I think companies should be free to choose who they allow. So GoDaddy should be allowed to kick the Daily Stormer off.
Yeah,
but the government should not have laws and regulations stopping you.
The only way for companies to do things is regulations, because if there's no incentive, there's nothing that they're not going to do a lot.
Incentive has to be you won't use their services.
I don't think that it has to be the government, and frankly, I don't.
Giving the government that power means they have it over you too.
No, I get censored by Facebook already.
Right.
It's not the government.
That's Facebook. Please don't run, Zuck. Please don't run.
No, but I definitely. But I don't think all speech is free. And I don't think.
Well, that's very true, because yelling fire in a crowded theater isn't free speech. Like,
and also, in doing what I also found was there was a Supreme Court case. I probably can pull it up on my phone, but it basically said that you cannot incite on school grounds. So all of these, which I didn't really know until like this past weekend, so which kind of brought an interesting layer. It's like all of these protests that we were seeing, like the UC Berkeley protests and like these UVA protests. So they're picking college campuses in which the Supreme Court was always like, hey, your hate speech. Yeah, you doubly can't do that on school grounds, on campus, college campuses. So I just think that's even funnier. Not funny, haha, just the irony of it, where it's like free speech. It's like no. The Supreme Court's already ruled you can't specifically have this type of speech here. You can do it in a park, but you're not choosing not to do that.
But I think we do have to talk about different, places where the speech is happening too, because the speech that happens in public is different from speech that happens, in your living room, which is different from speech that happens on the internet. And I think Gregg was talking a little bit about how we deal with free speech on the internet and how we make sure that people can say things that their governments abhor that aren't necessarily morally wrong. And that's the important thing. And you can't have the government policing that, because they are going to end up abusing it for political reasons. So how do we, as people on the internet, as, natives of this digital culture, how do we take responsibility for what's said on the internet? How do we make the internet a place where the government can't come in and shut you down for saying, fuck this candidate, fuck that government, whatever else?
Yeah, but I mean, when we're talking,
it doesn't allow neo-Nazis. How do you do that? It's hard.
But when we're talking about these type of groups, they're not saying like this political campaign. They're talking about full races.
No, I understand that white nationalists aren't political opposition. I'm saying if you give the tools to the government is inevitably going to end up using it against political opposition.
You can't give them the ability to censor, period. If they have the power where a tool exists, where they can put in a domain that says this no longer works, you can't give them any technical power.
I'll go back to my ISIS comparison. So it's like if you go to an ISIS sympathizer site, they know who you are.
Okay, they already gathered that information about you anyway.
So,
that's analytics.
Here's the thing. We should be treating, the people who radicalize young white men into the alt-right, into the red pill movement, the dark enlightenment, all of this nonsense. We need to be treating them like the same people who radicalize kids into ISIS. We need to we need to look at the process that happens there. We need to start building better tools to prevent radicalization, to de-radicalize kids before they decide, what's a great idea? Putting on a Pepe pin and grabbing a torch and beating some kid up in a garage. Like, we need to intervene before it turns violent. And it's not done by censoring the internet. It's done by monitoring what's happening, which is already going on. We're already getting monitored all over the place, and developing better tools to intervene and bring kids back from the brink.
Yeah, and just to add on to that too, we've also there's got to be another way. And censorship is the wrong word. But there's in terms of regulating too, because we've got the cookies, right? You go to one site on this thing, and then then the cookies find you, and then all of a sudden it'll just keep showing you sites and like ads. So it's like if you go to Breitbart once, it's going to continue to show you articles on Breitbart and and other things on Breitbart and other things on if you go to these the Daily Stormer, it's going to show you things of the Daily Stormer. That needs to there's got to be maybe, I don't know, because take away the right to cookies, because right to sell your information, because they had a fight for that in court. That needs to change too, because if not, it's gonna follow these people around, and that's just another form of radicalization.
I think this is one of those rare moments where I think the market needs to decide how this works online. I think the people need to speak with their dollars, and we need to stop patronizing. Well, one, GoDaddy. I mean, no one should ever be using GoDaddy in the first place, but that's a whole nother argument for 100 other reasons. But you need to stop using services that allow these hate mongers a place. That's what needs to happen. Now, what you get into there is this weird realm of, well, then how does the general public know who they shouldn't use. You know, there's these books you can buy of companies you shouldn't use because they're doing X or Y, and you know, and they're all about, you know, there's an entire book on just, you know, speaking with your dollars, and here's the good companies you can use, and the problem with that is someone's got to decide who's on that list. So how bad is bad enough that it needs to be censored? And someone has to come up with that. And whether it's a committee.
Southern Poverty Law Center does a good job of like, you know, tracking like these groups and these different like individuals. And like, you know, sometimes their list can be controversial in the forms of like, you know, some people might not think they're entirely like a hate group or, you know, a hate person, but they have done hateful things or borderline hateful things. But I think they do a good job of like kind of the whole scope, you know, of saying like, hey, like we're going to put the facts out there. You can decide for yourself.
Are we allowed to do that now that Fox News stopped with their, you know, fair and balanced, we report, you decide? Are we allowed?
Oh my God! Can someone just
did we take it back?
If we can just take Fox News off of the air, you know, like all 24-hour news channels need to be off the air. Like I do not agree with 24-hour news channels.
You know, I agree with that statement, except for could I still have my like couple hours in the afternoon with Velshi and I mean that show is awesome.
They can have their occasional shows, but the whole 24-hour news thing needs to go.
Yeah, like I like when they do like the specials, like the 90s on CNN. That's great. Like keep that going. But
just
like,
give me some of the specials. I just
I don't need Wolf Blitzer and his breaking news holograms for 4 hours.
Yeah, and he starts the breaking news 8 hours after it happened. Like I think it's a miracle that once in my life I was actually watching Wolf Blitzer and he said breaking news.
It was a miracle for Wolf Blitzer.
And he said breaking news when something was breaking instead of 8 hours later. It was just,
and it was probably the only time in Wolf Blitzer's life that actually happened for him.
It was also probably incredibly confusing for him.
Yeah, he had so many feels going on, and he didn't know what to do with them.
Guys, it's for real this time. It's for real.
I'm not just saying it. I'm not just saying it's breaking.
I mean, he's honestly probably so long ago reached semantic satiation that the phrase "breaking news" simply doesn't mean anything.
I think he wakes up like
he wakes up as like breaking news.
I'm awake. I'm having oatmeal, and then he goes to gets out of the shower. Breaking news! I just had a shower.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's wrong because he would get up and then he'd get out of the shower and he'd be like, "Breaking news for dinner last night. I had."
So. This weekend, it's Boston's turn, supposedly.
Can it not be our turn for the actual violence part, maybe?
There's a planned rally on Boston Common at the Parkman Bandstand. Originally, an attempt to permit this rally was done in July. Unlike what a lot of people said, that a lot of people said they did not file for a permit. They filed for a permit. Absolutely.
It was a building permit. Is that right?
Yeah, they filed a building permit, and then
they gonna build a rally
instead of a special event permit. They grabbed the wrong file, and then they filled it out wrong, and then. Even if you were filing a building permit, they sent it to the wrong office even for that, let alone the wrong office for anyone handling special events. So they did everything wrong you could do wrong.
Oh, so this rally's going to go off without a hitch.
I mean, really.
After all of the news talking about the fact that, they had no permit and they hadn't filed a permit, they finally did actually get the right form a couple days ago on Tuesday. And the city's been working with them to get it through a little quicker, so at least everything is on the record before the event, because the event was going to happen either way. And in Boston, they like you to get a permit, mostly because they want to be able to, make sure everything's safe, streets are shut down that need to be shut down, things like that. But they aren't going to stop your event simply because you don't have a permit. They are decent about that. You have to really... I guess piss them off to get them to stop it when you don't have a permit. But this was one of those types of events that could have pissed them off without a permit. Right. So they're making them get it. And it looks like that's going through. The person supposedly pulling this permit is Garrett Kirkland. And Garrett's an interesting character. He's pulled permits for the left a lot. He's done a lot of, well, actually not pulled the permits, but thrown events where a lot of the left is showing up. And somehow he finds himself on the right now, I guess. It's kind of crazy. That actually blew my mind when I heard that
means a
name.
lady probably rejected him.
I don't think that's it. I think it's the, so ideologically pure that you wind up sitting next to the Nazis.
Yeah, something like that.
Which is a very odd sentence to say out loud. Ideologically pure and Nazis.
Yeah, but here we are. All of us, I believe. I don't know about Chris here, but we're going.
I'll be there probably.
I mean, it's a spectacle at least. I mean, and
so what's your tactic for the going, Chris? Are you gonna wear like a helmet? Are you gonna dress like Pee the Frog?
I haven't even thought about the cosplay element yet.
The important question is, are you gonna be punching or non-punching?
I think I'll play it by ear probably. I think it depends how many people are in each camp probably.
Yeah,
if there's 10 punchers, I might.
Yeah, if there's like 10 people on the Nazi side, and like 500 on the counter protest side, punching might be ill-advised because
that's
that
just
might kill
optics.
them. Yeah, also,
only for the optics.
So,
yeah.
I'm trying to think, which Ninja Turtle should I dress as? I like
Raphael.
is that the red one?
No, the orange.
Oh, okay.
Right?
No, Michelangelo.
No, Michelangelo was
I thought
orange.
he
It
was
was
the
the
blue
red
one.
one. Yeah,
Raphael's the red.
Raphael's
Yeah.
red. Do
Right,
red.
okay. Well, who's
Yeah.
the blue one? Who's the purple one?
Donatello.
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 yeah.
Can I be
With
Donatello?
the bow staff.
Don't be Donatello.
He was
He's
the
worst
idiot.
He's the
weapon.
derpiest one.
Yeah,
Come
he was
on.
like so
But
derpy.
who's the red one?
Raphael.
Okay,
He
I want
was
to be.
smart.
Can I be the?
He had the
commie-
size.
Yeah, because I want to be commie red. So
Nice.
Okay, so I'm gonna be.
It's the right move. It's the right move.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be
I'm
Raphael.
showing up as me.
Okay, I'm gonna
And
show up
then
as
going to
Raphael.
attempt to not get arrested while also being as active as anyone needs to be
No, it's
there.
okay. If we get arrested, we'll just call my people.
Indeed.
So, and then Chris, you may or may not dress up as Pee the Frog.
I haven't decided.
Okay,
Yeah.
but if you do, we'll get a picture together, right? Okay.
I think so.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So, Chris, should they be allowed to have their event on Boston Common this weekend?
I guess. Right?
Solid answer.
You are the guest, and that is like the fourth sentence you've said.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
I'm asking you
You're
a
right.
question.
I mean, I think they should have the right to hold it or whatever, but I mean, it's kind of. I agree with you. I think it's more of our job to shut them down than the government themselves, right? Yeah. So
The court of public opinion, social justice, borne out by doxing and them losing their jobs and things like that, is what needs to shut this down. It doesn't need to be the government stepping in.
I read something that they have a permit that's supposedly for like 100 people. But like they don't have like the permit supposedly is like.
Well, everyone that was gonna talk has backed out.
they have like 4
People
left.
like Cassandra and whatnot. The Proud Boys have said they aren't going now.
Oh, good.
Evan is out, right?
Yeah, Gavin's out. So like, I mean, who knows who actually shows up? But a lot of the alt-righters started saying I'm not going when the Proud Boys backed out, because the Proud Boys are the ones who are kind of happy to go be punching bags.
Yeah, they're like the
And
ones that like
without
want
them
to
in the
aggress,
way,
right?
Yeah, and without them in the way, that just means all the other alt-righters have to like, be
I really
up
hope
front.
this ends up being like
That's
like
nice.
3 sad, lonely alt-righters.
That's what I feel like it might end up
It'll
being.
be like
yeah.
that one that during Charlottesville saw it turning bad, and he took off the white polo and he had black and red underneath, and he tried to hide it real quick, but someone saw him doing it. He tried to switch sides real
Oh my
quick.
God. My favorite photo out of the
all
whole
three
thing
just be like, nope,
was,
we're with you.
So Sean King tweeted a photo and it's like showed all the boys with their polo shirts and the khakis. And he was like, they're dressing like their leader next to the same outfit of Donald Trump. And I just thought that was like such a perfect photo.
I
It
don't
was
think that's
not a
accidental.
coincidence.
No, I know it's not accidental, but it's such a perfect visual like moment for like people to actually fully comprehend
Right.
what Donald Trump
Yeah.
is.
In
You know?
case you have any doubt about which side people are on, the people that are dressing like Donald Trump think that he's on their side. So
Yeah. I mean, I hope that this does not turn into a shitstorm on Saturday, but at the same time, like I was just like going back and forth of like, what if it is? And I'm like, then I said to myself, it's like even if it turns into a shitstorm, I as a white person need to be there, because it's like it's time for white people to stand up and be on the front lines, because we need to be.
And it's not just time for us to be on the front lines. It's also time for us to ruin Thanksgiving. Like, it really is. Like, there are people in your life right now. I guarantee every single listener here who is white, there's somebody in your life who has said just awful stuff, and you've let it slide, and we can't do it anymore. We just can't.
So I talked at the beginning of this episode about a mutual friend of mine and Kayla's, and this person was my roommate for many years. And we get along pretty well, even though he ideologically has faded into a different realm than me.
I haven't seen a lot of what he's saying recently because he blocked me on one of my accounts. But people like,
I am going to be inviting him to be on the show.
Oh, good Lord.
And he tentatively has said he's cool with that.
But here's the thing.
So hopefully next week he'll come out.
But here's the thing with people like him, though.
Maybe the week after.
He's fine in person. It's when you get him online, it's when he becomes more radical and more extreme in his beliefs. Because I remember last time I saw him, we were perfectly normal. But then he doubled down online. And we at that time we had like a kind of a truce because like we both have very different opinions. But we agreed that like neither, like I wasn't going to comment on his and he was going to comment on mine. And I did not go out of my way to comment on his page. Not that I like to go out of my way of comment on people. But he made it a point to comment on everything that I wrote. So obviously I'm not going to just let him,
right.
just say his words. But here's the other thing too, is like on my page, there's a lot of opinionated people on my page who aren't afraid to step in. So like he found himself constantly in this rabbit hole
of everyone attacking him on your behalf because of all the white knights who just
it's not white knights. It's just comics seeing a dumb person and being like, hey,
it is actually a lot of comics.
Yeah, it's a lot of comics seeing a dumb person.
They're not funny, but they're comics.
You don't even know them. It's hard
Come at me.
Throwing some shade.
Oh, yeah. Oh, do not start that fight.
Oh.
But and then he eventually ended up blocking me because he was like, we can't obviously be civil. I'm like, I am not coming after you.
But the thing is he's willing to have the conversations and he's willing to keep going into those spots repeatedly, which tells me that he's the right kind of person to try and have this conversation with. And so we're going to see if we can get him out. And, it'll be a cordial thing because being that he's been a friend for so long, it'll be a lot easier conversation to have than even with like a family member.
You think that, but sometimes
I do because I'm me.
Yeah, but sometimes friends is when some of the most difficult conversations, especially when they...
Is that why they all leave me?
Well, no, they leave you because you smell bad. But
damn it! Hey, I was like jogging earlier,
we can tell.
And you walk I don't know what, 1 mile a year.
No, I like to sometimes work out. I'm healthy.
Okay, well, so keep up when walking.
No, you are walking way too fast.
But anyways, let's move on here because we are a bit on a tangent, So I asked Chris, for a thing, and then everyone went just nuts. And you kind of agreed that we need to be the ones policing this. The public needs to be deciding, what's right and what's wrong here, not the government. And, for me, my reason is that I just don't want the government to be handed that power. Right. Because you don't know who they're going to use it against. If we allow them to do it, then they'll say, well, you had us do it over here. Now we're going to do it over here.
And there are a lot of people, I think, who are very eager to do that both sides kind of stuff. And,
devil's advocate bullshit.
Yeah, just conflating the two. And I think there is a danger,
Yeah. So let's do it ourselves. I think there's enough of us out there. I honestly think just going after their money, make sure that their bosses know what they're doing, make sure that their families know what they're doing. One of the people from Charlottesville got disowned by his family for going to this. Make that happen repeatedly. Teach them that it's not okay to go outside and espouse all this hate. That's what needs to happen. It doesn't need to be government censorship. It doesn't need to be government taking away permits. Our right to protest needs to be protected. We don't need to let them start doing that to anyone.
Unless it's Milo.
Well, yeah, I don't think Milo needs to...
Because he's not a citizen.
Yeah, exactly. Have I don't think Milo needs to have any permits taken from him. I needs a swift kick in the nuts, maybe.
He needs to be taken out of the country.
I broadly agree with your point that it does need to be us rather than relying on the government to do this because, of course, that is a very dangerous decision to make. But at the same time, I do think that it is important that we recognize that law enforcement really could do a better job of enforcing things like, these people are blatantly intimidating, they're engaging in harassment. Like, there are laws on the books that the police could be enforcing against some of this.
Yeah, I don't think marching with torches at night is peaceful protest.
Especially when you're shouting things about, Jews will not replace
And
us.
blood and soil. Yeah, that's not
and like surrounding churches. So that
you're
people are
not
afraid to
singing
come out.
hallelujah as you're walking with tiki torches. Like, that's not a peaceful thing.
Very true. And right, and people shouldn't go at them with violence either, though. In those instances, the police at that point do have laws that they can use.
If I'm moving my fist in a rapid way and someone walks into my fist, that's on them.
That's a style of dance in the hardcore world, specifically. And if you get hit, that's your fault.
And if I'm kicking the air as I'm walking and you walk into my kick, that's on you.
Don't think we don't see the Simpsons reference. We all see what you're doing here.
I think it's the last Simpsons episode I've ever watched.
So right before this episode, a few of us here in the studio went to our local city's solidarity rally here in Malden, Massachusetts. And it's a decent sized town, and a couple hundred people showed up, and the mayor, gave a talk, and a few people from things like city council and from the mosque and from the temple and from the Unitarian Church, spoke.
Nicole Masala was there with her tiny
Nicole,
baby.
who was on the show a few weeks ago, was there and actually kind of running and emceeing the whole event. And so we're going to be putting in some footage from that and putting it up on YouTube, putting some of it into the show here. And you'll see some of that afterward. And you'll also see some photos of that out on the social and everything else. But I think we're going to call it here unless anyone has anything specific they want to talk about. Because
just follow me on Twitter.
Just real quick.
Fit anything else in here?
Yeah. So, seriously. Anyway, so one of the people who showed up was our state rep, Stephen Iltrino. And the reason that he did that was because I have spent all week nagging all of my elected officials to actually start showing up to these events because it's really important. If you represent us, your constituents don't like Nazis. I am 1,000% certain that the vast majority of your constituents do not like Nazis.
Yeah, we actually had a vigil on Monday in my town, and Seth Moulton and my town rep were they both held it.
Yeah, it's not politically courageous to say Nazis are bad. So it's kind of a pain in the ass calling your representatives, calling your state senator, looking up all these stupid phone numbers, doing all that stuff. But it's worth doing the work, people, and it's worth doing all the hard stuff because in the end, we all have personal responsibility. We all have to come out and do this ourselves, but it's also important for us to be engaging civically and making sure these people are hearing our voices and are representing us and not the really loud, really alt-right. Like, we can't just hole up in our little liberal bubbles and pretend everything's okay.
It's comfy in my liberal bubble.
I know, but you have to actually pick up the phone sometimes, honey. I'm sorry.
I love calling Seth Moulton's office. His people are so nice.
That's awesome.
I recommend just call his office. You don't have to be in his district. They're super nice.
So,
but be nice to them.
Yeah.
When these events are happening in your area, call your reps, call your senators, call all your city councilmen, call your mayors, call your governors, get them to show up and show up.
And also be nice about it because these are
side.
interns that are answering the phone.
Don't yell at the interns.
I only did that once. I'm really sorry.
She did. That's why I said it. But that's really it. These events you need them to show up to. You need them, and we're trying to get them to show up to Saturday, and I think a lot of them are going to. At the event here in Boston, they did a little press conference, and good old Anna over here got a question in, and her question was very specific about them showing up to the event.
Look. Here's a secret, everybody. If you find out when a press conference is and you show up with a notepad and a pen, nobody actually asks you if you're a reporter. They don't ask. They just, okay, well, you're in with the reporters, and then you just speak up. It's a thing. I know it's hard to put on your responsible adult disguise, but it is so worth it because somebody else tried to interrupt the press conference, yelling Black Lives Matter behind them, and nobody heard them. The mic didn't pick it up. But I nailed Governor Baker to the wall saying I will show up if I can because, I just stood there and looked respectable for long enough That is the trick.
That matters.
Have your props be able to pass as a responsible adult for just like 30 minutes, and
Only
you can
time
change
where prop
the world.
comedy is okay.
All right, everyone. That is episode 21.
Yeah, we did it.
The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Eric Gowres, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie Locicero, GreggHoush Show, and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in.